What does nature mean to you? Is it something you can even conceptualize or understand? Is it a feeling, a place, something that defines a space as different or extraordinary? There's a general consensus in this country that nature is something to be untouched. Nature is a kind of purity. It behaves in a certain way, as a liminal space between civilization and the unknown. It follows different rules. Nature is meant to be unlived in. Nature is peaceful. It is something quiet and far out, away from human society. For some people, nature can be religious. The Old Testament credits several days to the construction of the earth, and only one to its first inhabitant. Others subscribe to the earth as a parental figure, something to be protected, cherished, and served, as it hypothetically exists to provide. For others, it is simply something to use or enjoy, without much thought. Regardless, it is clear that human ideals about the world around us are embedded in the way we treat the places we choose to live or not to live. When we begin to break down Western conceptions of nature, we discover that we have inexplicably linked our Earth to capitalism. Increasing efficiency in processes, expanding manufacturing and infrastructure, widening profit margins, and raising salaries and consumption are all well-known priorities for a post-industrialist capitalist society, across the board. Yet, humanity is well aware that we are taking more natural resources from the land for the sake of capitalism than it can keep up with. We know that it can't last. We know that it's unsustainable. But the interesting question is, how are we treating the so-called other parts? Land that seems not to be used for capitalist consumption. There is land that we don't touch for a variety of reasons. Land that is deemed either not enough or too precious to be mined, sown, hacked, or built upon has to undergo the same valuation as all other spaces in a modern capitalist society. It's almost as if capitalism assigns a range of meaningful to unmeaningful existence to nature and to land. Anything can be sorted into three categories: usable to make money through resources, valuable enough to create a profit on its own, or worthless, worth neglecting. The following questions are asked, even if done so subconsciously. Will this land produce more profit when stripped of its resources, or is it worth it to be turned into a product itself? Is it an investment? Will it produce no profit at all? We expect to see this in cities, for commercial or housing markets. But the things, spaces, and places that we deem most attractive to the human eye receive the same treatment, regardless of where they are. They are blocked off, carved out, and attract more capital for the purpose of sustenance. But, ironically, we define nature by absence. Millions and billions of dollars are and have been spent transforming nature into something that is consumable. The market for American national parks as a place to vacation and get away from the world has been growing since its inception in the 1800s. First, for the people living in coastal cities to explore the new Midwest as a product of manifest destiny, and now as an attractive destination for people from all over the world. This idea of foregoing one space for another has been linked to human custom for centuries. Pilgrimages have existed since almost the beginning of time, as a spiritual process to achieve rejuvenation, for celebration, divine maintenance, or some other spiritual goal. However long time has taken to transform spiritual journeys into the modern vacation is unknown, but for the wealthy, having the means to escape everyday life is usually tied into exchanging leftover capital to enjoy physical beauty, whether this means touring to the sea, or countryside, or somewhere far from the known. Nowadays, national parks are meant to be cheap, accessible, natural, and visiting them means contributing to a cause, restoring nature. But laying out plans for a park means many things, much having to do with the alteration of a space. Constructing trails, roads, parking, campsites, and visitor centers to bring people into a space transforms an area into a commodity. The commodity is special because its definition is so universal but also so personable. A national park can mean anything to anybody, and that is the appeal. It is a product that isn't expected to be a product, and it's sold to the public so under the radar and is so versatile that it will not disappoint. The privilege of nature is paid for by the people occupying the space and by the people purposefully left out. Free. To participate, money must be handed over for a day or week or year's entrance pass, parking fees, camping, hunting or fishing permits, and souvenirs bought at the gift shop to bring part of the park home for a memory. Will pay for the cost of nature. Capitalist transactions are justified by the so-called protection and restoration of natural land that this money is meant to go to. There's a public perception that park rangers or staff are meant to be protectors of the land. Official duties may involve beautification or public safety. They're still a part of the cycle that leads money to a place that the public deems responsible, one that actually builds more infrastructure to let more people in and occupy more land. The landscape enters a cycle where it is continually altered for the sake of restoration. But what is restoration if not the continuation of the process of changing land? To truly understand the concept, we have to ask ourselves, what is the goal of restoration? What are we restoring? It's certainly not the past, for Native American communities have occupied and used the lands of national parks long before the idea was even conceptualized. For example, while the Western Mountains and Glacier National Park are of spiritual importance to the Blackfeet tribe, their ancestral heritage and agreements with the government hypothetically grant them privileged access to their ancestors' lands, to continue practices like foraging and fasting in a sacred place. While these practices have been handed down to them for centuries, in practice, however, they are unwelcome, although they were there long before restorationists came into this space. Continually, they are explicitly targeted, followed, and harassed by the staff of the park, by the same restorationists who advocate for keeping the space the way it once was. The members of the Blackfeet tribe are not unique in this experience. Tribes across the nation are victimized in a power struggle, in which they face resistance or criticism for using the land in the way that they were taught to by their ancestors. Ironically, these practices are often far more sustainable than building infrastructure in nature. However, capitalism inherently grants more value to the usage of land that generates capital. In this case, it is justified by a social cause. The indigenous people who have no desire to participate are then seen as enemies of the cause. The cycle of restoration perpetuates a zero-sum game, one where indigenous people lose their land, culture, and traditions to an incredibly successful capitalist marketing ploy on people who are passionate about the environment. For many, this is a tough truth to swallow. The hypocrisy of the most famous places meant to preserve an idealization of nature fall victim to capitalism as well. Modern day, to be a person who consumes nature, even if it's out of a place of respect, admiration, or love, means coming to terms with past history and the present. There are native people who are displaced and land that is harmed for a profit that goes towards prolonging their suffering. The hope is that the same folks impassioned to protect the environment through restoration can advocate for its true, sustainable preservation, slowing the build of infrastructure, reducing the number of carbon-emitting vehicles allowed to enter national parks, Allowing less capital to flow into nature and working to be inclusive to indigenous people in their own lands should replace the vision of expansion for a future that is farther from capitalism and closer to the dreams of what nature can be.